The Watership Down podcast is intended for listeners who are familiar with the plot. There will be spoilers. This episode is recorded, edited and narrated by Newell Fisher and is scripted by Newell Fisher and Callum Woof. Hello, and welcome to the Watership Down podcast, episode 126, in which we'll be looking at season 1, episode 4 of the TV series and episode 4 of the series overall, Strawberry Fayre. First though, a bit of borough keeping. Can I remind you again about our appeal to raise funds for the Rabbit Welfare Association and Fund via justgiving.com, the link to which will be in the notes, or just search justgiving.com under my name, Newell Fisher. Next, for some reason this week, the reclassification of the 1978 film as a PG, or parental guidance film, by the British Board of Film Classification has been back in the news. As a result, Dr. Catherine Lester, who I interviewed in episode 121 after reviewing her book on the film, was interviewed last Sunday, 23rd July, on BBC Radio 5 Live. There will be a link in the notes, and the interview runs from 2 hours 42. Be aware that if you are outside the UK, you might have some issues accessing the interview. Next, I've had an email from Callum Woof from Cambridge in the UK, who adds that he is unrelated to Rousby. Quote, Dear Newell, I hope you're well. I just wanted to write in to thank you for the amazing work you've done on the Watership Down podcast. I've been catching up through the first 120 plus episodes over the last 2 months. I was first introduced to Watership Down through the abridged audiobook about 20 years ago and went from there to my mum's very well read copy of the novel. Coincidentally, we had a rabbit called Bluebell at the time, so I was very excited when his unintentional namesake appeared. Although I remember the TV show being on, I was about 5 years old when it first aired, so these were probably repeats. I can only recall a handful of episodes, in particular the Winter two-parter, which has no basis in the book, which put me off watching it again until your podcast got to it. I really enjoyed the analysis of the original book and of Tales, both of which I must have read over 20 times. It is interesting to hear the interpretations and analysis of some sections by yourself and others, and how some of things I have considered myself when reading the books, whereas others are very different. While not without its flaws, and some rather dated phrases, the way it is written, in particular the descriptions, the characters, and the realistic basis in the English countryside, similar to where I grew up, mean I love rereading the original novel. It is such a heartening tale. In my own mind, Tales is wholly canon, even if there are some unusual character traits and developments, as you commented on. I do enjoy the film, although I think it spends too much time and takes cues from part 1 of the novel, whereas my favourite parts of it are 3 and 4. They add a lot more complexity, which is somewhat brushed over in the film. Just regarding your rabbit appeal, I fully support it and hope it goes well. We had 4 rabbits during my childhood, and my parents have had 6 since, including their current 2, Beanie and Mittens. Mittens is the doe, and also, by the looks of it, the chief rabbit in their garden. When we were younger, they lived in hutches, but we've now realised a hutch is not enough, as the RWAF surmises, and the recent ones have lived in purpose-built sheds, larger and more sheltered. Both of them are characterful, curious and friendly animals, even if they do love to dig and generally cause carnage about the garden. The TV series is a bit of an unknown to me, but I will get in touch if there's anything I'd want to weigh in on in future episodes. Best wishes, Callum Woof. End quote. Thank you for those words, Callum. Much appreciated. And thank you also for your donation to our appeal. As you say, a hutch is not enough. And welcome to the Owsler. Next, following my reading out the email from Owsler member Eric Steps last week, in which he mentioned Richard Adams' gravestone not being present, fellow Owsler member Laurie Pepper has emailed to remind me that he looked into this during his visit earlier this year and emailed me in May with what he found out. My bad. I think I had a lot on my mind last week. To quote from his email from May, quote, After a long search and with the help of 3 friendly local ladies with sleuthing skills, it turned out that the headstone had been temporarily removed, possibly in connection with repair work or due to the fact that his wife is now also buried there. End quote. Thank you for the reminder, Laurie. Just after writing these words, I received Eric's wonderful full account of his recent visit to Britain, which I'll be going through over the next few episodes. It was a real adventure that has provided me with a lot of very useful information, for which I am very grateful. Thank you, Eric. Lastly, just another reminder that I am now showcasing Watership Down fan art by posting any that is submitted as the podcast title image on YouTube and posting the art on the podcast Instagram feed with no podcast title getting in the way, all of course with full credit given. I am not actively canvassing for contributions, so if you want to showcase your Watership Down themed art or know of someone else's art that you think should be, please get in touch with me either by social media or by emailing me at the Watership Down podcast, all one word, at outlook.com. Anyway, let's see how Strawberry is settling into his new warren. Season 1, Episode 4, Strawberry Fayre. The fourth episode of the Watership Down TV series was first broadcast in the UK on the 19th of October 1999. It was written by David Finlay. There will be a link to the full episode on YouTube in the notes. With this episode, the narrative moves even further away from the 1972 novel. We are back on Watership Down and being treated to Bigwig the Buffoon at his best, as he puts his Owsler of Dandelion, Hawkbit and Pipkin through human-style military exercises. Meanwhile, nearby, Strawberry is resting following leaving his terrifying life at the Warren of the Snares. Hazel emerges from her burrow and, seeing Strawberry doing nothing, goes up to him, shakes the earth from himself and coughs loudly. Strawberry comments on his nasty cough. Hazel responds by saying he had been digging. Rolling over, Strawberry says he wondered why he was so filthy. Hazel says he thought Strawberry was meant to be training with Bigwig. Strawberry responds that he was. He even volunteered, but Bigwig says he wasn't suited to the military, that he wasn't energetic enough. Let's pause here. In the novel, Strawberry, having lost his doe, Nildro Hayne, at the Warren of the Snares, is taken in by the rabbits as they head for Watership Down. Having helped conceal from them the deadly nature of his former warren, nearly resulting in the death of Bigwig in a snare, he is genuinely repentant and immediately becomes as useful a member of the group as he can possibly manage. He is first to condemn the slaughter of Pimpernel by rabbits of his former warren and is chosen for Holly's expedition to what turns out to be Efrafa, for which Strawberry pays a heavy price, arriving back on the down ill with exhaustion, but never complaining. This Strawberry, by comparison, is... well, I can think of some phrases that apply, but not on a family-friendly podcast. Lazy, entitled, ungrateful, all these words definitely apply. The title of this episode is interesting from this perspective. What is the implication of using this phrase from an old English folk song? And is this an intentional or even a mistaken reference to Scarborough Fair, released by Simon and Garfunkel in 1966? Is it meant to imply a rural idyll, the kind of life the Warren of the Snares was supposed to be about, a life of easy, pastoral leisure free from hard work? If so, this Strawberry seems to be trying to enjoy a safe version of the life he previously kidded himself he had. On that level, maybe it is understandable. However, the Strawberry of the novel still had to struggle to reach Watership Down, along with the rest of the rabbits, unlike the easy journey back this Strawberry had to an already established warren at the end of the last episode. It is an interesting contrast, and this is still definitely not the same Strawberry. Back at Lapine Boot Camp, apparently among the essential skills required of an Owsler are the ability to jump onto and then off large boulders and then run through hollow logs. The trick with the latter is to go one at a time. Hawkbit and Dandelion make fun of Bigwig by politely inviting one another to go first. Bigwig shouts at them. Meanwhile, Pipkin has failed to jump off a boulder, landing on his feet, which is very un-parkour of him. He then runs into the wrong end of the log with disastrous results. This clearly isn't exactly an elite fighting force. Hazel's conversation with Strawberry continues, with Strawberry saying how wonderful life is here, while Hazel says that with freedom comes responsibility. Blackberry arrives, and to Strawberry's horror says that he should be helping with digging. She then asks Hazel if he has spoken to Bigwig. He was just about to. Until the warren is finished, it seems Blackberry, the only doe, is a bit in charge. It's just as well, really. Strawberry is left still horrified at the thought of digging. Later, there is a meeting, at which it has obviously been suggested that everyone should be helping with the digging. I thought this question had been settled with a game of bobstones in episode 2, but clearly not. All the bucks, except Hazel and Fayre, agree that digging is doe's work, or Blackberry's in other words. Keehar and Hannah arrive as Bigwig refuses to dig. The ensuing argument ends up with Bigwig facing off against Blackberry, who points out that without a warren, what is there to defend? Bigwig says their lives. There is apparently a rumour of another warren nearby, a vicious, bloodthirsty one called Ephrafa. Hazel wants to know how he knows. These reports have come from none other than Strawberry, who wakes up at the mention of his name. He refers to the rabbits of Ephrafa as the Ephrafa. Bigwig says this is why military exercises are so important. Keehar loudly agrees, taking off and dislodging an acorn that falls on Hannah's head. Hazel points out these might just be rumours, so Bigwig sets off on solitary patrol to find proof. Blackberry takes the opportunity to point out that this means the rest of them can dig. However, Keehar and Hannah try to join Bigwig, who says they are no use to him, thus displaying very little imagination. Hannah tries pointing out that they can do things he cannot, while Keehar is just outraged that anyone would not need his help. We see Fayre sensing something dangerous. He hopes Bigwig will be careful. Bigwig moves carefully through long grass. The music becomes ominous. Carefully he approaches and observes a group of rabbits, our first sight of an Ephrafa wide patrol. It is led by Campion and Vervain. This Campion is, at first impression, a muscled brute, voiced by Rob Rackstraw, who also voices Holly. He is brown in colour, and to my British ears has a hint of an Australian accent at this point in the series. Vervain has a very distinct appearance, mostly dark grey, slim and with dark-rimmed eyes and what can only be described as a light-coloured goatee beard. His voice, provided by voice actor David Holt, is thin and not that of a brute at all, more that of an annoying pedantic bureaucrat. In the novel, after Fayre tells Vervain that he is sorry about his impending death, we get this terrifying description. Quote, Vervain, in his time, had encountered any number of prisoners who, before they died, had cursed or threatened him, not uncommonly with supernatural vengeance, much as Bigwig had cursed Woundwort in the storm. If such things had been liable to have any effect on him, he would not have been the head of the Auslaffer. Indeed, for almost any utterance that a rabbit in this dreadful situation could find to make, Vervain was unthinkingly ready with one or other of a stock of jeering rejoinders. End quote. I can very easily imagine this Vervain mocking those he is about to have tortured to death. However, I would struggle to imagine him doing the killing himself. Above all, the contrast between this Campion and this Vervain is the contrast between genuine strength and cowardice. For while at this point Campion comes across as nothing but a thug, albeit one with a lot of physical courage, his character arc in this series will be a very interesting one, while Vervain, true to the novel, will remain what he was from the start, a snivelling sadist. Campion says he has lost the scent of an outsider, so Vervain, in a moment of not getting the terminology right, tells the rest of the wide patrol to spread out in a wide patrol. They are to look for any sign of the outsiders. He adds that they all know what General Woundwort wants. Bigwig follows them. Back on the down, digging is well underway underground. Blackberry asks Strawberry why he isn't working and gets a weak excuse about it being too stuffy. She leaves Strawberry and asks Hazel and Hawkbit to start on another run. Strawberry offers to go above ground to help, where he remembers he forgot to eat any clover that morning after commenting on how dirty they are. Hazel tries to be understanding. Hawkbit is just angry. Meanwhile, the Ephraffans have paused in woodland, having found no signs of the outsiders. Campion says they will. Bigwig, nearby, overhears Vervain say that when they do find them, they will destroy them. In his shock, as he tries to withdraw, he puts up a partridge. Campion spots him, and the Ephraffans pursue Bigwig. Meanwhile, a new informal airborne unit of the Watership Down Warren is being tested, consisting of Keehar flying, with Hannah on his back, holding an acorn. Hannah thinks flying is fun, but Keehar points out that this is a serious mitillary exercise. The pursuit of Bigwig continues, reaching open ground. They reach a river with high banks, where Bigwig is able to evade his pursuers by his fitness and dexterity. One of the pursuers is swept away in the river, and the pursuit ends, much to the annoyance of Vervain. Back on the down, Hazel and Hawkbit pause in their work. Strawberry has disappeared. He is discovered sleeping nearby by Bigwig, who has made it back. Bigwig is not happy. At another meeting, he tells them all what happened. He tells them that the Ephraffans want to destroy them and that he needs everyone for the Ausla. All digging must stop. The usual suspects are happy about this, but Blackberry and Hazel remind them there is nothing to defend and nowhere to shelter until the warren is finished. Bigwig points out they could be struck at any time, at which point an acorn hits him on the head, followed by Hannah landing on him, having fallen off Kihar during landing. Their amusement at this is not shared by Bigwig, who reiterates that they need to form an Owsla immediately. Hazel agrees, but says they should split into two groups, a patrol and diggers. Bigwig is surprised, but this is Hazel's pragmatism in the face of fresh information. The two groups are basically who we started the episode with, but Strawberry will join the Owsla. He isn't happy about this option either. Kihar and Hannah want to join the Uzili. Bigwig objects again, but Blackberry points out that Hannah has interesting ideas, while Kihar can provide information from the air, but he is not interested. The boulder jumping and log running continues, only given Bigwig's escape at the river, perhaps it isn't such a bad idea. Boot camp apparently over, Bigwig leads his new Owsla out on a mission to locate the Efrathans. Kihar and Hannah look on angrily. Next to an old tractor, they pause, and Pipkin asks about alfalfa, meaning Efratha. This plant name isn't actually used in Britain, though we are familiar with the reference. Strawberry can smell something. He tries telling Bigwig this twice, but an irritated Bigwig tells him he isn't in charge and to go back to the warren, now. But Strawberry was right. As the rest of the Owsla move on, the Efrathans emerge from behind the tractor. They know their quarry isn't far away. Bigwig's unwillingness to utilise the resources available to him is going from bad to worse. At this point, he's becoming a liability. Strawberry rests by the river, feeling low. He realises he was useless at digging and at being in the Owsla. In another bizarre moment, a sympathetic frog tells him to change. He resolves to do just that, even digging if he has to. The Watership Down Owsla pause in a field as Bigwig realises they are being tracked by, to use his phrase, the Efratha. They need to lead them further away from Watership Down until they can lose them. Back on the down, Hazel and Fayre stop digging as Fayre senses rain approaching. Meanwhile, Campion spots the Watership Down Owsla and the Efrathans pursue. Bigwig orders evasive manoeuvres and they split up, with Bigwig, Dandelion and Hawkbit ending up hiding in a land drain, but it is blocked at the other end by a metal grill. The Efrathans close in. Just as all seems lost, Pipkin, who had fallen behind, runs past the drain, distracting the Efrathans. Bigwig tells Hawkbit and Dandelion to get back to Watership Down. He will help Pipkin. Back at the down, Blackberry tells Hazel and Fayre to stop digging as the storm is approaching. Just as they go underground, Strawberry arrives back, anxious to prove himself. As the rain begins, he continues on the run they were digging. A little rain isn't going to put him off. Pipkin is running for his life, but he is surrounded by the alfalfa, as he calls them. Bigwig, seeing this, runs at them. At that moment, an acorn lands on Vervaine's head, followed by Kihar attacking the Efrathans. This distracts them for long enough for Bigwig, who would have had no chance on his own, to get Pipkin away. Bigwig has to acknowledge that the airborne unit worked. However, Pipkin is exhausted and they have to pause. And then the heavy rain arrives, which masks their escape. Back on the down, Strawberry's digging becomes frenzied as the rain becomes torrential, and Kihar and Hannah arrive back. They shake their heads at his overcompensation. Hazel and Fayre come above ground to warn him to stop, but it is too late. The waterlogged entrance to the burrow collapses on Strawberry. Desperately they try to dig him out, helped by Blackberry, before he suffocates. They succeed, and the rescued Strawberry is horrified to see how filthy he is, because that's what matters in this situation. It is later on now, and the rain is gone. Strawberry apologises. He was afraid they would send him away, but Hazel says they would never do that. The Owsla arrive back with the news that they have encountered the Efratha. The Owsla will now help with digging as major changes are needed. Hazel comments that he thought Bigwig said digging was doze work, to the amusement of Blackberry, but Bigwig points out that this is defensive digging, which is different apparently. As the camera pulls back, Bigwig begins to instruct his Owsla as the others go back underground. Is it canon? Fun though it is, there is little to trouble us in this episode from this perspective. Though we are introduced to Campion, Vervaine, who is head of internal security at Efratha in the novel, has little reason to be with him on Mine Patrol, only joining him in the novel as part of the Great Patrol along with Woundwort in the attack on Watership Down. The training sequences of the Watership Down Owsla are pure slapstick, and this bigwig is a very poor captain of Owsla compared to the novel at this point, only succeeding at all due to the insubordination of his companions. Next time, Episode 5 of Season 1, The Shadow of Ephrafa. And at last we meet General Woundwort.